We're talking about affordability here, and we wanted to get your guys' feel for, because younger folks and what you've encountered when trying to buy homes and just about anything these days. I know it's a tough task. I've been looking over some of your notes here, and a lot of you have recently purchased homes or certainly are interested in doing that. And Austin, I want to begin with you if we can, because I'm looking here and it said you and your girlfriend just purchased a home in Southeast Portland. Yeah. Walk me through that process. What was that like for you?
Well, really, it started with we were renting. Our landlord said, "Hey, I'm selling the house, so you got to go." And so we were looking at places to rent, and we saw that even rent for what we were trying to get was very expensive. So we thought maybe we can just buy a home. And my girlfriend knew a real estate agent. We reached out, and really we just started looking at houses, and then kind of all of a sudden it just happened. It wasn't really there wasn't really this huge process. It was we looked at houses, figured out what was affordable for us, and we found one we liked, and then we put an offer, and then here we are now.
What'd you find? What kind of house did you get?
We got a bungalow, so just a 2-bedroom bungalow, like 1,200 square feet, pretty small, but a good place to garden and just in a nice little spot that we like, and yeah.
Well, when you looked into buying that house, what were the challenges you faced?
Oh yeah, the challenges were really finding something in our price range in the location that we wanted. I mean, there's plenty of houses for sale all around Portland, a lot of which we can't afford, or just it was in a spot that maybe was inconvenient for us for the commute, for our friends, being close to our friends, and then the commute are things that are really valuable to us. So really just finding something within our parameters specific to us was quite difficult, actually.
Were you surprised when you saw the prices of homes?
Yeah, I was surprised, but I kind of had a feeling it would be this way just because I've seen there's a lot of data out there about, cost of houses versus income and many other things.
Jerika, I want to talk to you. You just bought a home.
Yes.
In South Burlingame with your fiance. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, kind of really similar. I mean, it felt like, we've always wanted a home. I think most millennials have always cherished to have a moment to have that white picket fence kind of situation. And it felt really delayed, and I rented forever. And so what we did is really similar. We just started talking to a realtor. They walked us through that process. It seemed really simple, and then it came down to costs. What could we actually afford? What does our budget look like? And then the area was a huge thing. We ended up trying to look all the way in South Milwaukee, but that was a 45-minute drive for my partner's commute. There and back, high traffic. That's not possible. I mean, I'd like to see her after work. And so one of the big things is we just waited. I mean, we actually have to break our lease for our rental, which is an additional cost of its own, to do so. But we were kind of in this waiting game. We've been looking since January. And so that was a big thing is once we did it, we went through the lender, saw what our options were, saw what kind of costs and loan options. And then after that, it just became kind of the process of looking and seeing what's out there. For us, it also came down to, like I said, location, but also the space of which it was. Our house is about 1,000 square feet, 2-bedroom, 1 bath, but the yard's a nice large size for our dog, which we're really happy about. So yeah, that's kind of it. Is now we're in a closed space, right where we were actually renting before.
What did you think as you were checking out the prices?
Yeah, that was a lot, to be honest. I think one of the big things that we found is we were looking at homes originally in Southeast that were around $389,000, but those houses were going still for $450,000. And so we were really struggling, realizing that that felt really out of our budget. And then we happened to still find a house in that $450,000 range. So we ended up still paying it, but the difference was that house was on the market for 85 days. And we were able to do that because the person that owned the house before, there were some damages to the house. So we were able to kind of work with their seller to be able to offset those costs for us in the long run, which was really helpful. But I mean, that process of negotiation was crazy, of just you have to do it right away. It feels like a 24-hour, you're on your phone, trying to read through things. So that part I think was overwhelming in its own way that I didn't expect. I didn't know the process. I think it's something I understood in theory, but in practice it was the immediate call to your partner being okay, did you see the email? And then immediately being yes, okay, let's sign, And so I think that was a really interesting, like I even was at a wedding trying to talk to an inspector. Like it's just something where when it happens and you have to jump on it. But yeah, I think that's kind of the big part there.
I want to move over to Jasmine, if we can. Just graduated with a Master's of Education in Psychology. Congratulations
Thank
on
you.
that. Absolutely. Feel free to applaud her.
Yeah. Thank you.
This is all encompassing little roundtable we're doing here. So if you want to sing or applaud, whatever you want to do. All right. You mentioned you can't afford to stay in Portland, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, so education's not a really well-paid career path. So I got my master's recently in school psychology, and that is a little bit more than what, graduating with a master's in education and teaching. But even still, I mean, I probably wouldn't. I'm just now starting to think about maybe in 10 years I could afford a house. And I'm actually hoping to move out of Portland just because some of the other states pay higher for my position. So really for me, when I was planning or just looking for jobs, I had a hard time sort of justifying staying here with the cost of living, with my rent. I'm in a really great rental space right now, but in terms of wanting to upgrade I have a master's degree, I want to upgrade my lifestyle a little bit, looking at what I can afford even in the rental or, home ownership market is just, for me, it feels unattainable right now. So I'm hoping to move out of Portland in the next couple of months to find somewhere where the cost of living is something more affordable for me.
Have you looked at any particular place where you see, yes, it is a cheaper place to live for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually, I accepted an offer recently in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And I specifically chose that location because of the cost of living. What I'm paying right now in rent, I could double the square foot size of my apartment. To me, I mean, my apartment right now is a great space. I live in a house that's kind of renovated to be, everyone has their own rental unit within a house. But I have my own kitchenette and bathroom set. So everything's all included in my rent, but it's just not very spacious. It's very tiny. And it's been great while I was in grad school, but I definitely want more space going forward. And with my degree, I can probably afford a 1-bedroom. If I were to pick up a job in this area, I could probably comfortably afford a 1-bedroom, but that's about it. I mean, even that is like stretching the budget. So for me, it's really difficult.
It's got to be frustrating, I would think, for you. You've got a Master's of Education in Psychology. You worked hard. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it wasn't cheap to get to that point.
Certainly
and here
not.
you are. You've got to move out of town to get a decent place to live for you.
Yeah, it is frustrating. I lived in Portland most of my life, and I love Oregon. And certainly I could have looked maybe in some of the more rural areas of Oregon. But I also kind of, for me, home ownership has never been something that I dreamt about for my entire life. For me, I grew up kind of like lower middle class. And I think I didn't grow up thinking like, I'm going to have that white picket fence and a home and 2 kids. Like, I think I always sort of felt more like I just want to be happy and I want to focus on my life and traveling. But now that I do have a master's degree and I am older, I'm thinking, I do maybe in 10 years want to own a home. And is that really a possibility for me? I don't know. I guess I'll have to see. And it's something I can work towards. But right now that's kind of where I'm at.
Patrick, you decided to move out of Portland at one point to find a cheaper place to live. You ended up in Klamath Falls, and now you're back.
I did. I am. A lot of the things that Jasmine was actually just saying really resonate with me as reasons that I decided to move out is essentially looking at the cost of living here, whether renting or owning. Portland is kind of expensive. And I realized that, especially at the time, because I was working remotely, that I could move out of the metro area to a more rural part of Oregon. It's a place that I went to college there, and I really enjoy the city of Klamath Falls. So I decided to buy a house there, which I was able to get for, I don't know, the house probably would have cost 3 or 4 times as much if it were in the Portland area. So I was able to actually afford it, and my mortgage was about the same as what I was paying in rent in Selwood. Unfortunately, I mean, as you can see, I'm here. Things didn't work out for a number of reasons. I didn't find the kind of community that I really needed, or there's certainly a lot of city amenities that you take for granted, access to an airport, Trader Joe's, Costco.
All the important stuff.
Right, and more importantly, medical care. My partner spent a year on a wait list trying to get a doctor there, and was never able to get one, so we ended up moving back up here, and she got a doctor in 2 weeks, so that was really an issue. But besides just that, which was our you know, we have to move back moment, there were a lot of things. We kept driving back to see friends and family and things like that, and it just didn't work out the way we intended. So we're back in Portland, renting again in Northeast. So just a few minutes walk from the studio, actually.
You come by anytime you want. Do you see yourself purchasing a house then, back here?
I'm not sure. I would definitely like to own a house. I think that's something I've always wanted. The stability and the ability to, you know, have my own space that I can do with what I want. And you'd have to go back a few generations in my family to find anyone that actually owned a home or land. So that's something that I'd really like to do. I'm a little apprehensive about buying in Portland for one reason. I work in the tech industry, and locally the tech industry is not very good, so I'm worried, you know, if I were to buy a house here, that I might end up in a few years just having to move somewhere else for work. And I don't really want to have to, you know, buy a house to short sell it again. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. Thomas, you just recently bought a home in February, right? In Southeast Portland. How was that process?
It was good. I think the biggest struggle with doing that was trying to get the financing to like line up. Houses are expensive, and me and my partner's income just together is like not that much. So yeah, just trying to find a house that met our needs and also was affordable was the biggest hurdle.
You were, I read here, 880 square feet?
Yep.
Is that what you're in now?
Yep.
Do you mind telling the folks roughly what you paid for that?
$400,000.
$400,000. So when you were looking at prices, and when you first started out, did you think, boy, $400,000 is going to get me this, and then you end up with 880? Were you disappointed in that?
Kinda, yeah, because it really scaled with like, the thing was 880 was what we could get in the location we needed, because I don't drive, I commute by bus everywhere. And so being like within like close to bus lines and stuff was really important to me. We also needed like space for a dog in a backyard. So we looked at some other places that were in that same price range, and they were a little bit bigger, but they would compromise on the other things, or they would be like really ran down or something like that. So this seemed to be the best compromise we could find.
How do you feel about the house so far? You like it? You
Yeah.
feel good about the neighborhood?
Yeah, I'm loving it.
You happy with the purchase?
Yeah.
Okay. Carter, I want to check in with you now, because your wife is a real estate agent, is that correct?
She's in the real estate industry. She works in marketing for one of the
marketing.
local boutique real estate firms.
And you moved to Oregon from Georgia in 2018?
That's right,
Right.
beginning of 2018.
How's it going?
In a lot of ways, it's going amazing. I just celebrated my 4th wedding anniversary, my 30th birthday, and the birth of my 2 twin children, all in the month of April.
Wow, it's a
Busy.
It was a big
Oh,
month.
wow.
And we bought our house in 23, and with the surprise of having 2 kids at once when we were looking for one, we're gonna need to sell the house. Yeah,
What are you going to do?
we're gonna have to figure it out. Either we're gonna find a good place to rent locally, or we're not gonna be able to stay in the area.
So you've considered moving out of the area then?
I have considered it, yeah.
Wow. Have you started to look at any other places? She's moving to Pennsylvania. She might have a spare room.
Pennsylvania, it seems like if you're willing to tolerate a real winter in this country, you can find an affordable place in an area with good jobs. Ohio, Michigan, a lot of the Midwest. I'm from the South. I can't tolerate a real winter. Portland feels like an extreme winter to me. So, but if you look at other areas, they've experienced the same increase. If I look in my hometown of Athens, Georgia, you look at houses, what they sold for in 2019, a perfect house would be $230,000, and today the same house is on the market for $450,000. And that's what we saw when we were looking for our house in 23 here. 23 was the most expensive year to buy a house in 11 years prior.
How many here have thought, we know you're headed to Pennsylvania, and you've certainly considered, how many here have thought about moving out of the, I know you went to Klamath Falls as well, moving out of the area, just, let's go someplace that's cheaper, and have you, what have you considered?
My girlfriend and I have considered just moving either to like New Mexico or to Washington, really just to see a different, just a different area. We're both from Oregon, so it wasn't necessarily for pricing. In fact, at the time when we were considering moving, we didn't even expect to be buying a home. It happened so fast for us. So, but we considered for other reasons.
Did you all pretty much have sticker shock when you bought your homes? And was it like, wow, you got to be kidding me?
I think it's more for me is the house worth the value? Like, I truly do mean is like, I think that we're all at a stage of where, you hear and you recognize that homes help with equity and help with your future, et cetera, et cetera. But it's like, is this house really worth it? I mean, I think we should really ask the question. My parents had a bigger house and bought it when they first started, when I was little for like $83,000, and it was a ranch style house that had 2 kitchens, like 5 bedrooms in Troutdale, Oregon. Like I just look at it and go, I did grow up in homes, and so it's kind of like now I'm getting a house, and my parents came over, they're like, oh, that's kind of broken, this is fixed. Like they love the house, but it's also like, it's cute, kind of thing. And I think it's something of like, and I spent more money than you guys have ever spent on their homes. And so it is something that I look at of like, is this really worth the value? I hope it is in the long run, but as people talk about moving out, about affordability, I think it really comes down to when we think about affordability is housing prices continue to go up, but our wages are stagnant. They're not going up. So how are we supposed to maintain? For my own self, our mortgage is my whole paycheck. Like $3,400 every month, that's what I make net income. And so I could not afford a house without my partner. Like there was zero things. Like I really thought, I thought in my early 20s, like a house would come earlier. My parents got married when they were they got married at 23, had my brother at 25 years old, and they had a house, right? I didn't at 23, 25. I was just getting out of college, and now I'm 34, and I feel like I'm 10 years behind, like you just said. And I think it's like, it feels for me that our generation is 10 years behind than our parents.
I completely agree. I really feel like a lot of my friends who, so I'm 30 and I have a couple of friends who just recently purchased homes and they are also 30. Yeah. And I'm like, even in 10 years, I'm like, maybe in 10 years I could afford a house and then I'll be 40. Yeah. And I think it's so, I mean, my parents bought a house when they were 28 and had me, and I think the cost of their house was like $100,000. It was in Tigard. It was 4 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms, and now you look at that house and it's like $600,000-$700,000, and I'm like, why? Why?
Why? I think that's the question I have is why.
We were trying to decide that earlier. We were talking about that very thing because tell them how much you paid for your first house here in Portland.
Okay, well it was about 36 years ago, 40,000. And we bought another house that was almost twice as big 2 years later for 85,000. And now it's, last time I looked, it sold, and this was like 4 years ago I looked, it sold for 800 some odd thousand.
Yeah.
And the house I live in now is nowhere near that much.
Well, you mentioned about looking at homes regarding like it being like, I think you used the term like a broken down house. And we're thinking, okay, so the land has to be worth that. But in my brain, I go, well, I can't afford to demolish a house to rebuild a house again. Like, and I think about that a lot. I live in the Southwest, and we're renting an apartment, and our apartment is off of the water, so we don't have we're not looking at the water, but we're nearby. And there's a house going for $1.3 million that doesn't have a view. It's a 3-story building, and it's packed in next to another $1.3 million house in this neighborhood. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, for what? It has no yard, it has a single garage. And I'm like, I honestly think my apartment's a better location than your house. And it's just wild to me that I think particularly important, and I think one of my frustrating things is we all want access to parks, we all want access to water and locations, and like we pride ourselves in these spaces, and then we sit here and we go, oh, but only certain people get that access. And that I think is one of the most frustrating things for me.
That's a really good question, though, because as you sit here and you think about, Yvonne back here talks about buying a house for $40,000, here 400, 10 times that amount. Does anybody sit and go, why? Why is it so expensive here? Does anybody have any thoughts on why it might be so expensive compared to other places where you can get a house for half the price? What do you guys think it is?
There has to be a major component of a large percentage of the houses being considered investment properties for people who are renting them out or corporations buying up properties. And the opportunity that you can be given a mortgage for a $400,000 plus house when you really can't afford it, it puts people into the trap of giving it the go. If that money wasn't available, it probably would suppress the price of the house.
Would you guys, you had mentioned, Jerika, that, boy, you can't do this without a partner, Is that true with all you guys? Would you feel it'd be tough to buy a house on your own at this point?
Yeah.
Absolutely impossible.
Yeah, definitely.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
What about, we talk so much about the American dream. Can you still attain the American dream, or is the American dream different now, or what do you guys think about that?
I have some strong thoughts on this.
Zoom right in on that guy.
No, I think that it is, I think it's important to recognize that we need to keep the same, we need to define sort of the American dream the same way, because if we lower our standards for what we consider the American dream, then I think that is in a way giving up on, trying to get higher wages, trying to get more affordable housing. I feel like we need to really, we really need to try and push to attain the same things that maybe our parents did or the generations before without compromising, and saying, oh, I guess things are just different now, so we don't, we can't get as much now with our money. I feel like that's, in a way, just sort of selling ourselves short.
Anybody else?
I sort of envision a more a more inclusive American dream where, there is the option of buying a house and, having what our parents had, but also just like a more focus on like holistic wellness. Like if buying a home, or if that's not what you're like, if that's not good for you, I think the American dream of, material wealth is just one idea versus like, can I live a lifestyle where I'm comfortable and don't have to worry about money, and I can do the things that I want to do without the fear of being homeless or, losing something that's, like really important to you. So for me, I think, it is great to, I think we should still have this ideal of like, yeah, we want to have what our parents had. Like, we should expect that. And the fact that we're not there is really frustrating. But I also think the original idea of American dream isn't necessarily inclusive of other ways of living. And maybe we could expand our definition to include other ideals where, some people might want to live in a community, and if that's what, makes you feel whole and well, then that's great. Or if you don't have a home and you want to travel the world, that's another, maybe that's not American, but I think the idea of the American dream is just that we can, live a successful life, whatever that means to you. So yeah, it's just my thoughts.
I love that. I think one of the things I'd like to add is you're really talking about also the diversity of housing, right? So when we think about zoning structures and we think about the way that our neighborhoods are built, I think when we think about this more inclusive space, we should really consider that it shouldn't just be single family homes all throughout. If we could actually imagine a space of where there's a single family home and maybe a duplex or a triplex, things like that, that actually allow for our school districts and our neighborhoods to actually be more inclusive, that not everybody is paying the astronomical amount. I remember I was living in Washington State, but apparently my landlord said it's a federal rule, that my rent, because I was in a neighborhood, had to equal an average amount of the mortgage of the neighborhood. So even living in a neighborhood and renting in there, I wasn't able to actually have a lower cost. I still had to pay as much as somebody is making a mortgage on a house that they're actually investing, and I'm not. And so I really appreciate you bringing up that inclusive part, because I think that if we actually build our neighborhoods better, they'll not only just be inclusive, but the diversity of homes will actually strengthen places of Portland to give back in a space of our schools will be better, our communities will be stronger, and it will allow people to maybe be able to travel or do other things because their neighborhood is more connected.
Thomas, would you say you've attained the American dream? You just bought this house southeast, seem pretty happy with it. Would you say you've reached that?
I kind of just don't believe in the American dream fundamentally. I think it kind of sells this idea that, that there is one singular goal for people. And it also like really emphasizes this idea that like you can achieve these goals through like hard work. And I don't think everything's quite a meritocracy that same way. And so, I don't really believe in the American dream. And I feel very fortunate that I am where I am and I have a house. But I don't think it's like due to like working any harder than anyone else or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, you talked about too, Jerika, boy, your whole paycheck goes to these mortgages, and you still have groceries, utilities, transportation, healthcare, so on. Does that worry you when you think about that? Because you've got this huge mortgage now and all these other things you still have to pay for. Do you think about that?
We're playing a poker game with really high stakes. Our parents' buy-in was much less than what we're playing with today. 5 years ago, the grocery store did not stress me out like it does today.
That's true. Anybody else the same way? Do you guys feel the same way about
I get
all the
so
bills?
overwhelmed at the grocery store. Like I was watching Home Alone recently, and there's this scene where he goes to the grocery store and he's buying all his supplies for the prank that he's gonna pull, and like I think the total he paid was like $10, and he bought eggs and bread and laundry detergent. I was like, laundry detergent alone costs $10, and I was like, that was only like 20 years ago.
Right. Yeah. No kidding. We had some expressed concerns with private equity firms and corporate landlords. How many here have that issue, that concern, when you think about that as being one of the...
Oh, definitely. I think that there's many people trying to create a generation of renters for their own benefit, and that is pricing out a lot of people our age especially. I mean, if you're a firm, you can just make a cash offer well above asking price on a property, knowing you're going to make your money back over 10, 15, 20 years, and it's nothing for them, versus somebody who even just the closing costs on a house. I mean, you talk about buying a house for $40,000. Well, that's kind of the buy-in just to even get a house with a minimum down payment for a first-time home buyer. So I mean, it is having that much capital like a firm does is an insane advantage.
I think there are those who feel that they're putting up a lot of these apartment complexes because they know people your age can't afford to buy a house, so we're going to put you in these, and as many as we possibly can, and keep you there as well. How do we get out of this? That's the big question. Or do we get out of this? Is this just a situation that if you want to avoid a $400,000 or $500,000, $600,000 house, you got to go to Detroit, Michigan? I mean, honestly, what are the options here?
We need to build more housing. I mean, of all sorts of housing. Houses you're gonna, you were talking about duplexes and triplexes, types of housing people can own, types of housing people can rent. We just need more housing. I mean, that's the solution, is we just need to build a lot more housing and, create places for people to live. Because obviously people want to live in Portland, otherwise there wouldn't be the kind of demand there is for houses around here. The problem is we just haven't built enough houses over the last 20 years for all of those people.
Anybody else? Any way out of this thing?
I think just to add on to that, I think that's not the entire picture, because I think like the private equity and corporate landlords are really the problem there, because there are so many vacant houses. There's some statistic about there being like 28 vacant houses 28 vacant houses per unhoused person, and so like there's just so many houses that are just like, just because these very like these private equity firms can like just drain money on having a house empty until like they can fill it at a way higher cost. And so I think that's the real issue is
legislation.
I agree too. I think another issue is that we do, we need to build more houses, but we also need to improve the houses in the communities that already exist. Like there are already great homes, but they're falling apart, kind of like you said. So I think if we, built more around communities and invested money, in improving communities that already exist and like giving those people access to better housing, then maybe, we could afford more. People could afford houses. More people could afford houses.
Well, and I think that goes in part, like I'm hearing multiple things, but one of the things is one, we talk about the American dream. Well, then we also have to not just ask the individual about the American dream. We need to start asking our local governments and our state governments and our federal government, what are we wanting as for our people as the American dream? Because it's not just an individual issue. It is a national issue. It's a state issue that we really have to address, that if we all agree that everyone deserves a home, which I do, then that means that we have to build a system for it to be there. The other thing is, you're right, we need to also help support repairs, particularly to keep people in their homes, right? Our elderly are needing to get places, especially if their roofs are collapsing or they need more accessibility, like ADA ramps, to replace a lot of crumbling stairs. Like, let's be real, Portland is an older state. It's also an older community that we also need to recognize of, like, if we want people to be staying and living in their homes or giving their homes to their next generation of their children, we have to make sure those homes are viable to continue to live in. And I know there's a lot of organizations across Portland that are helping in this area, but they can't do it all, right? You can't rely on a nonprofit to be able to be the only solution to these much larger issues. I agree that we do need more homes. I also agree that we have a lot of homes that are empty. That $1.3 million house I brought up, both of them then they're all year. No one's buying that. You think that some doctor at OHSU is gonna go buy that house? I don't think that's the case. Like, I just don't see, again, how the value of that home is worth it. It's 3 stories. Okay, but you're not gonna be there most of your day. And so I just really do believe that, like, we have to start really looking not as an individual, but we must start looking at a whole local level. What does the city of Portland want for Portlanders? If we want people to, quote, have an American dream, let's define that as a city official. Let's define that as a city council, and we'll be more strengthened so Portlanders can get together and actually say, hey, neighbor, this is our plan as our city. Hey, neighbor, I can help you out. I mean, I will say, as like the place that we're moving into, I'm so excited. I have so much hope for Portland. Like, I love Portland. I think we're going in the right direction. I think that we're really helping small business owners, particularly through groups like Prosper Portland. That's really, really important, because if we have jobs in Portland, we'll have housing. We have to be a group that actually comes together and say, this is the plan for Portland, this is the vision, this is the goal. And the only way we do that is if it's communicated to each other here as residents of Portland, to be able to say, like, hey, I hear you that you need help in housing support. Maybe I can rent my bedroom, right? Like, maybe we can help each other, but we don't know that unless we have a vision for that.
Carter, you have twins.
That's right.
Does anybody else have kids? Does nobody else has kids? Are you concerned about their future when we look at the prices now in Portland and you can't afford groceries or transportation, healthcare? Are you worried about them?
Absolutely. And also, I know they're going to be smart, productive individuals, and I'm going to do everything to support them to figure it out and navigate the future, because the next generation is always the hope. You know, that was us when we were kids. Our parents put their hopes and dreams on us, and I'm going to have to do that with our kids, because it's scary moving forward. But I feel like we're at a boiling point where we either need to figure out how to turn the heat down now, or we're going to boil over. So hopefully by the time they're adults, we've made some big changes.
We talked about some of the high cost of a house. What are you sacrificing to buy that house these days? Is there anything particularly you're sacrificing? Maybe not having kids? Some things like that?
Talk about a 10-year on a house. I feel like that's another 10 years. I mean, I feel like anytime I talk to my parents about it, they're like, oh, well, like, we just figured it out. We felt the same. We just figured it out. And I'm like, figure out what? My car payment alone is $800. right? Like it's something that's just, I don't know how you're supposed to also incorporate and then provide, right? You guys want to provide the best that you possibly can for your child, your children. And so it's like, to do that, what are you gonna scrimp on groceries so your kids can eat more? I mean, the job that I work in, we already see families making those decisions, right? Like, do we do groceries or do we pay a bill? Do we do this or that? We're all sacrificing in various ways. Like, we had to completely redo our budget and make some real, like, okay, we weren't even going out that much. And it's like, it's not your vanilla latte or avocado toast. It's truly like, oh, wages are stagnant. Like, I'm just not making more money. So how am I supposed to continue to keep affording more things? So I don't think it's us having to cut savings. I think we need to start talking about our wages.
I want to give you each a chance to say something, if you'd like, about affordability at this roundtable that you want to make sure and get out to our viewers when our town hall runs in, 2 weeks? Is that when it's? A couple of weeks? Anybody particular want to say anything about affordability before we kind of wrap things up a little bit? Or have you said it all? Huh? Do you have any questions, Sammy? Yvonne's got a question back here. Yeah.
Would you mind just sharing what it is about having a house? Why is having a house important to you? Assuming, I know there's different versions of that, but why is having a house important to you? That might help me a little bit figure this out.
That's a good question, because, you know, some people, you mentioned it wasn't always the top of your priority list, but for some folks it obviously is. Why is it important for you to have a house, Thomas?
For me, I just didn't like giving money to a landlord every month. I'd rather, build my equity, and I don't think the landlord adds any value to like my living situation. And so just owning the house myself made more sense financially.
What do you think?
The exact same for me was, the difference between, for me, renting and owning was $800 a month, for a mortgage versus renting. And to me, that was worth it, because at least I'm getting ownership in something that'll, maybe down the road I can leverage that to move somewhere else. So really just, I'm actually investing in something, and something that I can own. I don't have to, email a landlord to say, hey, can I do this? Can I do that? It really feels like something that I'm owning, that's mine, and that I can continue to develop over time, and that will benefit me in the future. So it was, it's well worth the cost to me. And I feel like I recognize it's really a privileged position for me to be able to say that, but that's also, that was it for me.
Anybody else?
I was certainly sold on the idea that it's the way for middle income people to build wealth in this country. Yeah. And I felt like taking that opportunity was almost essential before trying to start a family or moving on up in the world. I'm less convinced of that now that I've been in it a couple of years because of how high it is now. I just can't imagine it can get any higher for starter homes. Because if in 10 years I'm supposed to sell my house for $600,000, it's a 2-bed, 1-bath with no garage, no driveway. Who's gonna buy that? That's kind of the crux of it all.
I think for me, it's not that important to own a home just because I value other things in my life versus just like material wealth. And like you guys are talking about building equity. Yeah, that's certainly on my mind. But to me, I've just valued more just experiences and just like connecting with people and traveling. So for me, it's not that important to own a home, but I think the idea, that my parents, were telling me when I was growing up is that, you have something that like grows with you and, it's like a reflection of you and you can customize it and like make a space that's really your own. And I think, maybe in the future, if I did want to have kids or like, I'm interested in fostering like cats, but I think it would be nice to have a space like that. But for me, I don't know if that's in my future or not. I'd like to try and plan for that, but if it doesn't work out, I'm not going to be really disappointed or regret anything in my life.
I think housing to me and why it's important is because I think it gives you a sense of freedom, It allows you to actually be yourself and grow and bring your community in. And although you don't need a house for that, I think that there is a space in which, housing just really gives you, I'm really excited to grow and build into this house. I'm excited to paint. I'm excited to do whatever I want to do with the house, right? I'm excited to get to know my neighbors. I'm excited to walk the dog in this new neighborhood and explore new places and new coffee shops and all these different spaces that, I get in my current rental. Like I do. I love the space that we've been renting. I'm going to miss those coffee shops and I get to go visit when I want to go. But I think that there's a space of where I get to feel stable. I get to feel this sense that like my partner and I get to like grow a family. Right now we have a dog and 2 cats. We feel that, want to always get more animals. But we also like consider, where does this take us? If we have children, this is a house that they can either have in a future generation, right? Maybe it's not necessarily our equity, but what if my parents are getting older, right? What if we need a place for them to live? Like, what does that look like for our generation that I truly don't feel that our nation's taking care of our own citizens? And so we really need to start thinking about like, how are we taking care of our current community and those around us and our family and friends? And I think a house allows me to be able to sublet my own place, right? Like I can't let a friend stay at my apartment unless I inform them, right? And so we have these spaces where now this house allows me the freedom to help.
That was very good. Are you happy you moved from Klamath Falls? That's the big question of the day. Are you happy?
I am happy I moved from Klamath Falls. It's nice to be near friends and family and so many more things. I do still really like the town, so if anyone is watching from Klamath Falls, I absolutely adore the nature surrounding town. Downtown is very cute. Some of the best Mexican food I think I've had in the state.
Home ownership though, is that still on your mind at all?
It's definitely something I would like in the future for 2 reasons, which I think you kind of touched on. For me, it's 2 things. One of them is stability. If you look at how much the cost of owning a house, the cost of renting has gone up in the last 10, 20, 30, whatever years. Go back far enough and you find, rents that are comical, and it's like I spend that on a sandwich now. So the idea that if I actually want to stay living in Portland or anywhere else for, 30, 40, 50 years, owning is kind of the assurance that I will be able to do that and not, get priced out and have to look at moving away again to Klamath Falls or Pennsylvania or wherever. And then the other thing is the freedom to kind of do what you want with the house, whether that's to have pets, to let other people live with you. I might also be in the position where my parents might, at some point need some help. The ability to paint, to plant a tree and be able to actually watch it grow, I think is just something valuable that you don't get as much in a rental. So for those 2 reasons, I still would like to own a house eventually. I think it'll just have to be somewhere more like here for a bunch of reasons, social, economic, otherwise.
You guys are fantastic. Would you guys agree?
Yeah.
How good these guys are? Did you have any more questions, Yvonne?
I did, and I forgot.
That's okay.
I had
Go ahead,
one.
Sammy.
I was just doing research online, and apparently some Americans believe that corporations like Google or Amazon or Costco are going to start entering the corporate land ownership space. And there are some Americans who believe, hey, that would be fun. I would rent a property from Costco. What likelihood do you see that happening of them entering this space sooner? And then what your reaction to that is, what you think about it?
I haven't heard anything about it, but I hope not. I think it would be better the fewer corporations we had involved in housing, but I have no idea how likely that is or not.
I have no doubt that if there is an easy way for them to do it, they will find a way to do it.
I think that goes back to something I said earlier, which is just, what is our plan as a country in that sense, right? If our ideal is that we, quote, have an American dream, if our ideal is that we're supposed to take care of one another and care for each other, then why would we allow corporations to have a space to purchase property and land in which Americans need homes, right? We have to stop this role of a sense of oh, I'm a corporation, I can buy and do anything I want. we have to start putting some regulation on this monopoly because it's hurting Americans. It's hurting each other by not being able to create this ability, have a freedom of being able to grow equity or whatever you want to do with these homes. I just think it's insane that that's happened. I've actually heard that as well. I don't want to buy from Costco. I don't want to buy from Amazon. I also don't want to buy from Amazon now. Like, I think that we have to come together, and I know it's difficult for so many people because costs are expensive, because groceries are expensive, because gas is expensive, but we have to like slow it down. We have to ask ourselves, what is our goal? What do we want? And let's plan for it as a community, because I do believe that Portland can specifically help address these issues. I think the state of Oregon can help address these issues. They are trying to do that in the state legislature with building more homes and things like that. But I do believe that like we have to do a larger of an explanation for residents of Oregon to say, what is our community goal? And I don't think the solution is having a corporation come in and say, oh, don't worry, we got your apartment set. I don't think Amazon apartments in Seattle are all that great because you have to work for Amazon. And that isn't building anything. That's not helping us.
We've done company towns in the past, and they weren't that good of an idea.
Sounds like a dystopian sort of movie right there. I mean, I guess I would be really worried about, I mean, it just seems like the antithesis of what the American dream is. Like, if you have a corporation, I would worry about them just like mass producing apartments that are just terrible quality versus like people, you know, building homes that like are authentic to them. Like, that to me is like the American dream versus like, why would I buy a cookie cutter home from Amazon? And then, you know, again, you talked about like the monopoly of them just owning the entire, you know, they own the housing market, the insurance market, the goods and stuff. I mean, it sounds like too much, and there would be so little we'd have to have some strong regulations about what they can do, because I would be really worried that they would be trying to take advantage of how much they can produce for so little.
And I think they've proved that they continue to take advantage now, right? There's no, like, not ever have they done, I would say this, is there is no proof that they've done something right that I would trust them in housing.
Well, if you buy from Costco, you have to buy in bulk. That's what
Comes with a hot dog as well.
hot dog comes with a hot dog. Did you hear that one? That was good. Yvonne does have a question.
One more question, and
Yeah.
real short. What would you like? How would you like government to respond to the housing crisis that we're experiencing right now with the prices and stuff? Do you think government should respond? Do you think it's just a market thing? Any thoughts on that?
You talked about it a little bit,
Yeah, you did.
Jerika, where you said the legislature, they're talking about building more houses.
So
and
they
on.
are talking about, and I think you might know this as well, is they are talking about cutting more trees, right? There's lots of different groups that are going for that, both for housing, because Portland has been stated that, or not Portland, just in general, Oregon has been stated that we are low in housing. I think that two truths can be true, right? I think you both are correct. I think that we do have a lot of housing that are unaffordable, that maybe we need to really ask ourselves, why are these price points this way? And I think that's where government does need to come in. I do not believe that regulation hurts things. I think regulation allows that we have safe drinking water. I think regulation allows that we don't build homes with asbestos anymore, right? Regulation actually allows for that freedom for us to actually live and prosper. So when I look at governments, I look at what is government, just use the city of Portland specifically, how is city of Portland addressing housing, right? So they have programs like LIFT that helps with nonprofits such as Habitat, provide funding for low income and affordable housing. I think those are solutions. I don't think it's end all be all though. I believe that we need to make sure that our government is interested in regulating so we don't have this corporate groups coming in. I don't think housing can be a commodity. I really would love for Portland to say, hey, you don't have so many homes. You gotta narrow that down, because I don't think it's truly fair. And if we all as a value, as Americans, as Portlanders that believe that there should be some fairness in housing, then we have to start asking the hard questions and say, maybe you can't own 20 homes as your income, right? Because that means that you rely on somebody else paying for their home for you to have income, and I don't think that is It's not good. Yeah, you're shaking your head.
Yeah, we need to limit the amount of property that somebody can buy as an investment and prioritize people who are first-time home buyers or just single, you own one residence. We need to prioritize this. We also need to increase federal minimum wage. How long has it been since that has happened? It's not even $10. So there isn't a single person that is affording a single family home on minimum wage anywhere, even minimum wage, even if you work at a company that pays you $19 to $20 an hour, you're still not going to be able to do it. We really do need legislation, I think, and we need to build more homes. We need to limit the amount that you can invest in buying properties, and we need to pay people more.
Did that answer your question? You guys are really good. I'm saying that again. Let's hear it for them. Huh? Good job, you guys. And when are you running for office, Jerika?
I was going to say I'd vote for you.
Put down the clip. No,
That's right. That's right.
effort
What did we
right
call her
now.
yesterday? Jerika America or whatever that was? Jerika
America.
Furguson. Right, America. Thank you guys very much. You were absolutely terrific. And that was it.
There's nothing else. Anyone? I mean, this is the speaking hour, forever hold your peace moment. Anybody, dying to say something right now, or?
I feel like we're all going to walk out and be like, oh, I had the perfect thing to say.
Yeah.
Well, there'll be round table 2 at some point, so we'll do this.
I think that regardless of if you want to buy a home or not, the affordability of housing is a broader signal for how things are working, how we are working as a society. If in general people cannot afford to buy a house, then we do not have jobs that are paying people enough. We do not have healthcare systems that are making people feel secure enough to where they don't have to worry about, do I get my medication this month? Do I get groceries? Or do I pay this bill? I think that it is a broader signal of how we are doing and how we are supporting another.
And that really, sorry to interrupt
No,
you, but that really, impacts where I see a lot of damage is that these kids then who don't have stable housing, they come into schools and they bring all that trauma with them. And then we get a lot of reports of, just all of this bad behavior and kids can't read. And then you look at these kids' situations and then you can see that their house is falling apart. Their parents are working 3 jobs and they come to school with all this trauma. And so, I think what you were saying about how housing is kind of a gauge of the health of a community, then you can see like schools are also, an aspect. You can see like a school, how is a school doing? Well, how is the housing for these students? And then, it's kind of all of these different systemic factors that you kind of have to look at to understand what to do and like how to help, the community. And I think what you're saying really resonated with me about just gauging the health of the community by housing and seeing what's affordable.
Well, and it's no coincidence that certain schools in certain zip codes are doing better in certain areas than others. And if you look at the housing and the access to a grocery store even, it's no coincidence that, people that have access to healthier food, more affordable housing, they probably don't have as many problems in their schools. They probably have higher test scores, higher graduation rates. So it's, definitely not a coincidence.
Thank you guys. You guys were fantastic. Honestly, what's the date of the town hall again?
26.
26. You see yourselves on there. So you better tune in. All right?
Yeah, I could talk about this for hours.
Honestly.
You guys were great.
You guys
Thank you
were
so
absolutely
much.
great.
Yeah, you guys